All right. In the bottom right, I'll put up the correct score, I suppose. In the bottom right, as the blue Terran, he is uThermal, traveling all the way from, well, the Netherlands, I guess. I'm guessing that's where he started anyways. To Cheesadelphia. And the top left, traveling from the west coast, I think? I don't remember. It is Astrea. Point is, less travel for Astrea. More travel for uThermal. And there was a bit of a competition going on. You know, are Europeans actually better? They sent 2 Europeans to this tournament. Are they going to win? Who knows? I actually don't know. I don't know who won this. But Astrea is the American hope in the situation in an American-based tournament. And he is about to find 2 racks being built. That is an amazing find this early on, as it is borderline impossible for both barracks to be finished. One barrack, sure, and that's enough to make something happen as the Terran player, but both barracks really shouldn't finish. I think Astrea is being a bit greedy almost by going after the faster barracks SCV, because he should absolutely get this one. But had he, like, you know, focused on this one and then it hit in this corner and he didn't get it and this one also finished, that would have been such a weird disaster. But uThermal not giving up like most of the Terrans would do and just, you know, being okay with 1 barracks and Reaper proxying is going to bring more SCVs over. But 1 SCV very, very low. Another SCV also getting down low. 1 barracks will in fact finish as it should, but the second barracks really should not finish. If Astrea had been silly enough to... not pull additional probes. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Okay. Nope, here comes the savior. Here he's coming for it. He's gonna get it. Get it! Oh, the Marine pops out as well. Oh, and the slick move through. That SCV is baller. He's gonna have both barracks reducing Marines, but this has been scouted this entire time. Obviously, Astrea knew what was going on. Now, it's possible he assumed that it was only been 1 barracks and thus was a little bit too greedy because the second barracks really isn't supposed to finish. So maybe he went for soccer a little bit later. I actually wasn't paying attention to that part. But the soccer is only now just coming out here after the Chrono Boost being a little bit late. Probes obviously have been a bit of denied mining time, so you don't have as much as you would be used to. And the bunker was over halfway done with another SCV pulled, and that's going to complete the bunker. It takes 4 shots from a soccer to kill an SCV, which is too many shots for to take from the Marines. No second soccer out quite yet. Chrono boosting finally once again as he gets the energy. But that bunker is going to finish. 1 soccer with very, very low health. Second soccer being pushed in here. Oh god, he gets it. 2 Marines should lose their lives for this, but he really wanted the bunker. He's not going to get the bunker. He was going for it, but the Marines were actually body blocking him. And that Nexus, upon the last second, has to cancel. Mark is in Mexico. He started from Mexico? Okay, see, that's why I wasn't certain. It was either Mexico or the Netherlands. Well, that was very close on many, many different fronts. 2 stalkers now. Very, very unfortunate to lose any stalkers to a Marine push. Pretty unfortunate to lose it to a Reaper as well. But the point is, like, stalkers should be king in the early game as far as surviving. You know, if they're getting low on health, you pull them back, you don't lose them. But wanted to try and get that bunker, was unsuccessful to do it, and now the bunker is kind of king. Stalkers don't really take it down fast enough to be comfortable taking it down, especially if there's a second bunker to go into. So that's when you need an Immortal or, well, just a lot more units. It will eventually go down. You don't have a lot of repair going into it, but this has been a real bummer, basically. Astrea got the perfect scout on a 2 racks, and yet still had to cancel his command or his Nexus. At least it was a cancel, and it was very close to not being a cancel. If that's not a cancel and he just straight up loses 400 minerals, that is truly devastating. So that's like the shiny border on the cloud, right? Like, it's your silver lining. That's all you get. But it is a silver lining. Warp Prism going to be used aggressively here. Now, uThermal should be expecting that. There's 2 options. There's getting a Mortal out first and try and bust the bunkers. But the second option is to get a Warp Prism first. Either way, either option, you would eventually get a Warp Prism and initiate a counterattack, because that really should be what you're capable of doing. Now, that can backfire sometimes if the person goes for Banshees, for instance, and you try and defeat them. But the Banshee comes out, you didn't bring an Observer, it kills all your probes. I mean, many things can happen, it gets kind of weird. But usually, even if it is Banshees, second Observer pops pretty quickly, Stalkers are warped in, shield batteries made. You don't actually have to worry about that too much. Oh, I actually snuck out the probe. So it's up to the Terran really at this point to be wary of a counter, even if they think they can keep the Protoss back. So uThermal, very wary of a counter. He's got 2 tanks now. Second one just popped. He's got a bunker on the way. He's gonna have 2 Marines in it, but it's better than nothing. And perhaps most importantly, he made a Viking. This can be a very, very devastating counter if you don't basically predict it, which I've learned through dying to the same thing. But if you predict it, then it's actually quite nice. The Vikings take care of the warp prism pretty okay. It basically can't get a warp in. If it gets a warp in, you might be dead. If it doesn't get a warp in, then you're fine. And you know that behind this, the Protoss' Nexus is at least very late, if not at all on the way. And that's kind of where things get tricky in this replay, doesn't it? Because uThermal did not see the probe being pushed out of that warp prism on the 3rd base. He saw nothing. We even have a recall of the probes in the main base, so he oversaturated it, then recalled it, even a little bit more than undersaturated, right? Because he's gonna be able to build probes there easy peasy. And that was a pretty perfect transfer, quote unquote. Now going into Forge and Twilight Council, and this is where uThermal's denied scouting, the not knowledge here is really gonna hurt him, because he probably should have been able to get a command center faster on the ground. Astrea was not warping in anymore. Not that he could really determine that, but if you know they have a Nexus, and you see how many probes they have as well, then you gotta figure there's not been a lot of warp ins. But that's a perfect scouting world, which just has not been perfect scouting. It'd be really hard to do that. It's possible if he left one of the barracks, you know, float over here, I suppose, and not die, but the barracks burned down quite sadly in the top left. This is a very defensive setup. 3 tanks all on the high ground, bunker still there, Vikings patrolling against the warp prism, very defensive. He does get the natural up and running. I just think that he could have done a lot faster. That's mules on that natural base a lot faster, not mining, over mining your main as much. It is pretty significant, but the game does go on. uThermal is going to be behind in workers, about 17. That's certainly good for Astrea, even with his delayed Nexus. And the one thing we have to worry about here is that army production has been a little bit better for uThermal. Well, Astrea got a natural with probes and is going for a 3rd base. Of course, he should be having to sacrifice something, and that sacrifice was army. But he's not only getting Nexus and probes, he's also getting +1 armor, storm, and charge. So he's also investing into technology here, which will greatly benefit him in about 2 minutes. Unfortunately, uThermal's army is coming right now in the next 20 seconds. And it's headed right towards the 3rd base, which is actually his natural. Also where the High Templars are. Sim is about 20 seconds away from finishing. They will not be able to pounce on the High Templars. Looks like safely out of range from the tanks as well. That was truly, truly dangerous. A drop. No, Viking harassment actually in the main base. Terrible to deal with, actually. 2 Vikings take on 2 Stalkers. But more importantly, the High Templars survive. The probes survive for the most part. The Nexus will die. But there is a natural Nexus up and running. The Vikings have been taken out as well, so the Warp Prism could come back into play, perhaps for some drops of storms. Did it die? Oh, it's still over there. It also could have tried just warping in here, but can't afford to do that right now. Trying desperately to warp whatever he can back at home. Astrea had a lot of lost mining from transferring those probes, and just simply did not have an efficient amount of bank to start off with. He's been struggling a bit while he's gotten all that technology up. Now it's all done. He's got upgrades, he's got charge, he's got storm. He is lacking a bit in mobility though, as the Warp Prism now offensively. No! Oh! Barely out of range of that missile turret. 4 extra zealots would have been so helpful. That still will be a lot of lost SCVs, and uThermal is already on the worst end of things for the SCVs, so this will make it even worse. Astrea has mostly kept his army alive. A couple Stalkers would have died here and there to those tank blasts, and that is a lot of tanks. That is going to be really difficult to combat. But Zealots are supposed to be better at that, so he just needs a decent number of Zealots to actually take this on. The Storms would also be a bit juicier. Again, maybe bring that Warp Prism back home, but it died, so you can't really afford another one. He's going to have to go with it as is. 2 tanks on the high ground, not siege. That is a great little start there from Astrea. Bottom side also taken down by just a handful of units, and the Immortals on the high ground looking very good for a Protoss player. Doesn't nick the 2 High Templars, or rather gains an Archon from it. That's pretty good. Or a lot of DPS from the Marines focusing on it. It barely doesn't die, but soaked up a ton of shots. Combat shields is done, making these Marines a little bit meatier, especially against those storms, but no more time to build up storms. Lots of stims are going to go down here, and eventually they're going to be one-shot to just the base Zealot attack, not the +8 anymore, granted, but still. And that's certainly a worry, but 5 Medivacs, I think that is still looking pretty strong. There's a lot of micro potential here, but as soon as he lets Storm accumulate again, that's going to be it. As good as uThermal could be with his micro, that would have to be it. He's trying to rally across the map, but Astrea smartly using his Zealots to break that reinforcement line. And with the Stim Zealots now, they are very good at running away. If they're the old Zealots, they actually probably die. Well, most of them die anyways. But every single one of them escapes. Gets the army to chase him as well, as uThermal, I think, was already planning on retreating. He built up to 5 barracks on 1 base, but you note how he could barely even afford that. He doesn't have add-ons on 3 of his barracks. That's a bad sign. And has not been able to produce many more tanks. The Zealots are caught. I believe that last one died. Yeah, just barely, but it did die, so that's still 600 minerals, you know, gone, not too efficient. But Astrea has 2 bases fully saturated. Hell, his natural is actually healthily saturated because it wasn't used initially. And he is grabbing his 3rd Nexus once again. Now, uThermal, seeing a potential macro game, is also going to grab the 3rd base. He'll eventually be able to add on whatever he wants to his tech labs. It does seem like he's sticking with the tank-based army. uThermal has shown us this type of style before, including up to 2nd and 3rd factories with Pure Marine. And that's kind of what I'm expecting here. It's also a very good composition to do when you are on a low economy. You don't need too many tanks to be efficient, especially against like stalker armies. And Marines are obviously the cheapest, most microable thing you can get, so they're really good to get in that situation. But you know, it becomes worse and worse as time goes on. There's a reason you don't really see Marine tank into the 12, 13-minute TVP, because Zealots just kind of deplete the tank's usefulness, and Storm, Colossus, what have you, deplete the Marines really, really fast. It's a vulnerable army, even though the tanks are supposed to be tanky. But it can work. And if he continues on with this, no more tech labs added on, I would suspect another factory. But he's not just going to turtle. When you do this style, you are supposed to be dropping with at least 2 drops, if not more. 3 probes went down, not too much for 2 medevac drops. Maybe a High Templar went down as well or something, I'm not sure. Well, this is weird. This is stupid. This is taking way too long. Oh my god, he's gonna grab 2 Stalkers and a High Templar. That made that drop worth it. Oh, and he barely survives as well, so extra worth it. This drop also barely, holy shit, still alive. As it goes back, it scans ahead, actually, sees nothing. As Astrea saw the army move out and was trying to get into position, so he's not paying attention to his probe line anymore. Lots of storms are prepared for this. Immortals as well, Guardian Shield too, but the High Templars have to be very wary of the tanks. That's really where the tanks come into effectiveness. Maybe they die to the Zealots, maybe. The Marines pretty damn good at taking down Zealots. But most importantly, they target fire on top of those High Templars and take them out of the equation. It's definitely a micro battle. There's a lot of micro that can go into this. It can also look really, really stupid for both parties, you know? If either one of them are truly clumped up, they're both going to have a really bad time. Trying to spread out his army as much as possible looks kind of like it's just being cute, but it's actually really making Astrea choose how he uses his storms. And just in general, having a concave over to this right side, 3 tanks in a pretty prime position as well, and Astrea just simply not enough time on 3 base economy to get that overpowering amount of Zealots that you would like. But he is coming in from multiple angles here. Concave for Astrea, and a back attack as well. Whatever units you could muster up. The reinforcements of uThermal actually looking quite good. Take out the backside of the army, and on the forefront, the Immortals were not enough. The High Templars couldn't get in range of those Marines, and the tanks hold strong. uThermal continuing to rally forward too. He's now got his 3 bases up, 54 workers to 43, not too bad for the Terran, and adding in some more complicated units like a Liberator could do devastating damage here. No Stalkers have really been made because they're not going to be effective. That's actually the right thing to do, but that means that Liberators could be very effective. Blink is almost done. He could start adding in Stalkers as time goes on. Ooh, pretty juicy storm right there. So close to grabbing lots of Marines. But the Stalkers aren't here right now. Blink's not going to help in this fight whatsoever. Lots of storms available once again. No High Templar being focused either till the very last second. And they do not go down. The tanks are all taken care of. And now all that's left are these very juicy Marines looking so dangerously close to dying to a single storm. uThermal somehow barely manages to escape. I liked the recall from Astrea. It was kind of cute to like split his army to try and catch that, but there was a 3rd exit path, and uThermal just takes it. So he loses the tanks, but he keeps a large portion of that Marine army alive. Not too bad. Not the best, and not what he was looking for, though. Really hoping for an endgame, you know, scenario right there, but instead forced to reconsider his late game. He has not been mining off of much gas because you really are trying to get as many Marines out as possible. So only went up to 3 gases actually. Now going up to probably all 6. If he does plan on including a second factory or even a couple of Marauders, that would require almost every refinery. As it is just Marines and Medevacs. Medevacs taking up a lot of the gas for sure. So there it is, 6 gases. Unfortunately, a little late on that. You know, if this was a situation where he could have had consistent gas income, he'd have 4 or 5 tanks again, but only limited to the 1, and I'm not sure he can continue getting away with the style too. Now that Astrea has been on 3 bases for a while, not being attacked, that Zealot count's really going to grow. The Archon count can grow. It's actually something that Astrea needs to work with here is 1,500 gas. Could be a lot of Archons. And Archons are going to be especially good against this type of game, this composition, because uThermal doesn't have the resources to actually go into Ghosts. It's really hard to fit in Ghosts when you're also producing tanks. Again, like, he's only on the 1 factory. He never got the opportunity to go up to a second one. This wasn't as turtly as some of his other games with tank-based armies, but yeah, the point is that it's a lot of cheap units and only a couple of expensive units. And if you add just 1 more expensive unit, just 1 more, whether it's Ghosts or Liberators, and all the upgrades that you have to get for those 2 units, that's just a little bit too much. It's hard to do everything. And right now he is choosing Liberators over any Ghosts. Is that the right call? I'm not sure. But Astrea still isn't using all of his gas banks, so I don't know. I think trying to take advantage of the temporary lack of stalkers is a good idea, but as soon as Astrea realizes what's going on, and he should soon, Observer's in really keen location, then you just warp in stalkers. And unless they get to +2 and the range for Liberators, stalkers should do the trick. Second factory is on the way, continuing with this style. That again is going to mean no EMPs. The High Templars might be taken away and might be zoned out by the tanks, but this is where I think Archons are actually very effective. If you have a gas bank at the very least, like, go for a bunch of Archons. They're going to be able to tank a lot of tank shots. They do okay against the Marines, and I would love to see a shield upgrade, and that's exactly what Astrea is doing. Love it. And they're going to be even better in some situations than High Templars. The only thing that kind of sucks for them is that they can be out microed for sure. But that's the game, man. You can't just build 1 unit and expect to win. Well, you can until a certain level, but not this level. It's always going to require some form of micro or setting up positionally and all that type of stuff. But speaking of setting up positionally, Astrea did not notice the army. The Zealot was, I guess, a little late here. It wasn't an observer. He doesn't notice the army go to the right side. This is the most abusive location to put your Liberators and your tanks. This is going to be, oh god, so gross to take care of. Yeah, I would abandon ship. Unfortunately, abandoning a ship quite late, letting that army get there was, oof, just a mistake of scouting. But on the same situation is happening to uThermal. He did not know the army was in the middle of the map. He floats out his 4th base, which will be taken down eventually. But Astrea wants to dig a little bit deeper. He wants to get on top of production. He wants to get on top of economy. As we're into basically a base race here. A Storm looks like it hit mostly his own probes. There's not hitting as many Marines as you would hope. And now Liberators and tanks not having anything to deal with them. There's also a big drop into the natural that killed more probes. And actually, Astrea doesn't really know what to do. He has a decent army for one or the other, but is split so much here. I think he's just starting to get kerfuffled. I don't know what the attack move back into this attack was going to do. This was clearly a better army than what Astrea had. He could have perhaps dealt with this late game, or not late game, the second army, but took forever to do so. That just seemed like a bunch of misclicking to me. I'm not sure. But that 3rd base survives. Lots of SCVs also survived. They were pulled pretty quickly. The only thing that really died there was like 10 SCVs and the 4th command center, which is okay. That's fine. That's fine for uThermal. That's fine for a Terran. Astrea lost 53 plus probes. He lost a decent chunk of his army to some weird waffling back and forth. And he's let this army, this very positionally based army, get into a nook that he just really doesn't want to deal with. It's not as bad as it could be. You know, if all the Liberators were here and the tanks were protecting this one, that would have been worse. It's about as good of a concave as Astrea can hope for, but it is up against 7 siege units. 3 tanks will pack a punch. I think that could just be diluted by having 2 angles of attack, which is exactly what Astrea is thinking of. So I'm not so worried about the tanks. I am worried about 4 Liberators. They will take down a lot of these units. Some of them are very weak, like these charge lots. And they can certainly take down the High Templars where they actually reach the juicy center of the Marines. You're going to have to split very wisely and micro very well in this situation to actually make that effective. But Astrea is not going to do any of that. He's not microing. He's just going for the counterattack. Base race it is. A couple tanks are trying to protect their natural and main. And well, now with 3 tanks and a Liberator, that might just do it. This army is going into a choke. And Hallucinated Colossus, I think uThermal saw that, but no scan available. Astrea now thinking, maybe that won't work. Maybe that's not a good idea. He was in an awful choke. The Marines actually providing a buffer, which they usually are not going to do very well. And Astrea is forced to retreat. Now, he does stop the 3rd base from mining again. Gets a couple of SCVs and finds a couple of reinforcing units. That's not too bad. Lots of reinforcing units, actually. 2 medevacs and a handful of Marines. They go down without a fight. We're up to, oh my god, 7 Liberators on the front line now, though. Oh, geez. Oh, hey, SCVs were found. So that's looking better for the economy, but that's not really what I've ever been worried about. uThermal has all these siege units that, oh my god, if Astrea had gotten at least like 2 Tempests, this would be a no-brainer, but these Marines are actually going to safeguard all these siege units. If one storm hits these Marines and they're all gone, then taking care of the Liberators, it's a lot easier, but... Oh, no. 10 energy away from having a storm turn into an Archon. But that's not even going to help. Lots of lost gas. And at this point, we're even talking about minerals. Oh, nicely done. Warp Prism into the natural. I didn't see that. uThermal didn't see that. There goes all the Marines like I was talking about. And suddenly, taking care of the Liberators gets a little bit easier. But even if you were to place the Stalkers right here, the tanks would suddenly be a problem. This is still not easy to deal with. 1 Tempest would have been a huge difference. But yeah, back to the mineral thing. There's no more minerals to mine in the main base, so Astrea literally cannot afford to build Observers or High Templars. The 2 cheapest things you can really expect to make as a Protoss player, and he can't even afford to do that. Can't make an assimilator either, so if we're talking about real base race territory, that's not going to go so well for Astrea. uThermal continues to pump out Marines even on 22 workers because he still has 3 orbitals, so that's a decent number of mules. And maybe even can afford to produce more SCVs in the future. But right now, very scared of a counterattack. Doesn't want to actually deal with the base race. Can't really blame him. He's got a lot of the units back at home, and he is putting priority on making the units. Or static defense in this case, like a missile turret. Having to take care of his own gateways. Not that they're helpful, so go ahead. Try and get a better concave here. This one should also go down. But that is 7 Liberators, and that seems like too much to me to deal with. A nice little Zealot run by. Does target on top of those Zealot SCVs, and they do escape as well. So that's actually really good. 1 Zealot for 4 SCVs. Storms are energy-based, and, you know, technically they can be reused a lot. So, you know, a couple of quote-unquote useless storms is better than nothing, and that is a beautiful use of the Warp Prism with the Immortals. Liberator's not covering the tank so much. Astrea noticed that and took advantage of it. Stalkers, geez, blinking past the Liberators, forcing them to retreat. Oh, God, he actually did it. He actually found a way to break that little contain there. I think uThermal was being a little bit too greedy by just leaving it there like it was without the Marines protect it, without the synergy of the Liberators and the tanks, and not in any real sort of choke. There was 4 different ways, really, that you could come in here. That was kind of on uThermal for overstaying his welcome, but he might have also underestimated how much army Astrea really had. It's been hard to keep track of, even for me, the observer, how many armies are going to bulk up to one big army, and it's actually a pretty damn decent army. Lots of storms, once again. Liberators trying to tackle the Archons more than the High Templars, and they take quite a few shots to actually kill them. Means that those Liberators did not help whatsoever against the High Templars. High Templars out with the Marines on the ground, but there's still so much army left over. 1 Liberator very, very low on health. The tanks were just obliterating the Protoss army across the field, and that is actually it. Storms be damned. As long as you have tanks and Liberators, that's going to be enough. Astrea lost out in game number 5. And a very wacky game, but I loved it. Thank you very much for that submission. Hallucinated Colossus for Vision, not a bad idea. Yeah, I guess he was going for the high ground. Not that it helped, ultimately, but yeah.